to day 9 of our 30 days of PM challenge, where we discuss all things about product management and what does a typical role in the product management space look like. So, I am a product manager. My name is Shagun, and I work in a B2B SaaS organization building and scaling products and product features. And this is my attempt at the 30 days of PM challenge, trying to look at resources that are available to us in Substack articles from Crewwork, where we have multiple topics to discuss and go through, and along the way, covering the details and data from Crewwork, we also look at other resources and references we can look at and get a better understanding of the topics and essentially the things involved in a typical product management role and things that a product manager does on a typical day. So today we are at day 9. We are looking at user research. We talked a little about user research in our previous streams where we covered product discovery and continuous product discovery for that matter, and how users essentially and customers generate requests and have their ideas for features to be integrated into the product. But you as a product manager are responsible for which of these features get picked and provide a way for users to use your product for a particular job or task at hand that the customer is trying to achieve. And through the user research and product discovery process, you come to a conclusion on getting a better understanding of the problem at hand, because a lot of the times problems requested by customers and users are very specific and they probably don't provide all the context you need of why a particular request for an enhancement has been raised. So it's your job as a PM to figure out the underlying reason and cause for a particular request and how best to achieve and solve for that, right? So this is part of your discovery phase where essentially you are talking to customers, researching their requirements, figuring out the needs of a particular requirement and the scope of it, and figuring out how do you then take all the information and knowledge you gathered from the customer with the context and build solutions for that. And user research typically is a lot of time that you need to invest in a very already jam-packed day for a PM. And PMs are responsible for multiple things, as we have covered. They are responsible for planning, prioritizing, building these features, coming up with ideas such that the business generates value, but the customers are also happy. So you are responsible for keeping a lot of stakeholders happy, working with multiple of them throughout the day, context switching based on the requirements and the asks they have, and clarifying them along the way, unblocking them essentially. So user research becomes very important because for you to build something, a lot of the times you will make calls, make bets along the way for features to be delivered, because for example you didn't have the right amount of time, or you were already blocked on a lot of things, but you still need to deliver this requirement to engineering for them to build and deliver for a customer, because they are blocked and essentially cannot move forward. So there are instances where you are tied up in terms of timelines and other requirements on deliverables, and for you to also make these bets, you have to have, essentially it has to become second nature of trying to figure out what the user actually meant when they meant they are facing X problem and they want us to remediate it as soon as possible. If it is a bug, that's straightforward, you just tell engineering to fix it. But if it is something that is currently not available or possible through workarounds and other options within the product, you have to then essentially align the user at the other end and make them comfortable with, yes, I understand your request, but I need some more context and need some more questions for you to be answered for me to take things up and deliver them, right? So there will be instances of that for you to capture these requirements, and talking to customers is a very important part of the job, and user research and product discovery essentially helps with that, right? So coming to more details on what exactly is user research and how things are done, what you are trying to do is interview or talk to customers in any format possible and come to understand their root cause, through the 5 eyes and all the other frameworks we already talked about in our previous live streams, and then build and ideate a solution. But for you to do the user research, the focus should be on the problem, not on the solution and the options you can provide the customer, right? Because there will be multiple ways to solve a particular problem, but if you don't get the problem right to begin with, your solution towards the end and when it's built might not really solve the use case, or the customer is not happy with what you have built, and probably down the line will require a lot of, will build up as debt that can, I mean, essentially take a lot of your time to fix and iterate. So it's better to figure out these things earlier in the user research and the ideation phase of product discovery. So you have these stages within product discovery where you are looking at the idea, you're looking at then building on the idea, and then again validating that idea with the customer and growing from there, right? So you have the discovery phase to begin with. You explore the options, talking to customers and researching with them, and then you test your hypothesis with a certain, maybe you have already data present that you can refer back to or look at to using third party tools or your own database where you log all the details for a certain scenario that the customer has reported, and you want to see the options available to fix that or iterate and improve or add an enhancement onto it, right? So in the development phase you test a few things, you explore them again once the development is done, and you release it to the customer once the internal team is satisfied after the testing and validation of the enhancement. And then after it is released, you listen to what has been delivered. If there has been positive feedback, you take that. If they expect additional incremental updates, you take that, do go through the discovery process again, figure out the right way to do it, and then go through the cycle of product development and research in a sense, right? But a lot of the time user research is tied hand in hand when you are looking at ways to solve a problem and thinking of how else could this problem be solved for, right? And that comes once your query on the problem itself is clear. A lot of the times products have in-app feedback sections and feedback menus where customers can request for a particular enhancement and request, and then go from there, right? So probably you can capture some level of detail through a feedback request within your platform, get those requirements. If you have any clarifying questions, request your customer for a call or a user interview where you can ask them to walk through the workflow that they currently use and where are they exactly blocked. And through the call and the user research and interviewing them, you probably can figure out or recommend them alternatives to at least unblock them to for the time being, and then take those recommendations and, I mean, ideate with them, build like a document with the requirements and attach it for delivery for engineering. Once that is done, you then go back to the customer, provide them the enhancement, get some more feedback, and then iterate. A lot of the times for smaller enhancements to be done, you don't really go through a lot of this user research process because it's probably more straightforward in when it comes to smaller enhancements or just fixes or incremental updates. But when you're building something from scratch, or for example within your existing product you plan to add a new section or a new way to manage some workflow, you want to understand the workflow from the customer who has requested it, but also look at opportunities and options where other customers can also leverage an enhancement that is being added from for the product, right? So these are a few ways to for you to think about when doing user research. And you can probably also, you as PMs, we always have a backlog of things that have been requested to us to build and be available within the platform. So a good way to also iterate and improve on your existing product request that has been prioritized is to look at other previous requests within your backlog and see if they can also be accommodated within this request, right? So there are multiple steps to it. You look at, you talk to customers, get any additional context you need from them, iterate on that, build like a requirement documentation, review it with your engineering team, get for example the amount of effort and time required, prioritize it accordingly, build it for the customer, validate it with them, get feedback, and then the cycle goes on. and part of the user research, as we already talked, interviewing is a very important skill for you, and understanding where the user is coming from, right? It's at the end of the day, with startups and with organizations, half of your problems are solved if you talk to your customers. And always, because the customer is the one paying for your service or the product at hand, and they are only paying because they see some value on to begin with, right? And for you to build trust and grow from there, you have to create these relationships with your customers, and build on top of that to provide them incremental updates such that they're happy with what is being offered to the product, and you also have leverage then to create other business impact in terms of additional opportunities. But yeah, Paul Graham has a very important tweet just about that, about talking with customers and how to talk. He mentions in one of his tweets where half of the advice is given to startups is some form of talk to your customers, right? At the end of the day. So startup stuck, for example, a feature not growing or not having the adoption they expected. What is the way to improve it? Talk to your customers. But a lot of these answers to your problems eventually can be solved by just talking to these customers and building relationships with them, and growing it over the long term, right? And he also mentioned a second component, which is probably to make sure they are default alive rather than depending on investors, right? With the VC world, we know they invest capital, and they invest capital by focusing on acquiring market share, as is in the US the culture with VC. So they focus on market share. They don't care about, because the investors are pumping in money, profitability is not a consideration to begin with, but market share is. So you also have to keep in mind to not just always be depending on VC money, where throwing money at your problems will probably suppress them for a while, but for it to be actually be solved, you have to think it through, talk to your customers, as Paul has already mentioned, and grow and iterate from there. So yeah, talking to customers is very important, and it only happens once uh, you get out of your mold, talk to various personas, various users. You might not have all the details, but you have to play dumb in some ways to figure out and come to a conclusion and come to an understanding of what the user is actually looking for. And if there are ways to solve for that, very good. If there are no ways, take that insight, take those learnings, prepare the hypothesis, figure out the root cause of the problem, and then look at options to build that, and go with a series of options, validate it again with the customer if required, if it is a big change and might impact multiple services, and grow from there. And then you can go through the engineering queue and validate once it's delivered, and iterate on the process. But yeah, there is a very important, very good video by YC Combinator, Y Combinator, where they mention about how you talk to users and how the process is in essence, right? So I'll just play this for a few seconds, and we hear that they talk about how to talk to users and how to talk to your users, and how the founders essentially are responsible. This is all in a startup context when building products, but yeah, this can be applied whenever, even in your personal conversation when talking to people who you feel like might be interested in something that you can offer to them, and they talk about the process here. So yeah, I'll play this for a while and we'll proceed from there.
How to turn your conclusions into an MVP. Most people in the world have the idea on how new startups are formed completely wrong. They think ideas of new products is something the founders just come up with on a lazy Sunday or a late night coding session. You probably know it doesn't work this way. This scene, as you can see here, is a scene from the Social Network movie. It's a great movie, but they got a lot of things wrong on how Facebook actually got started. This is Brian Chesky. Brian is the co-founder and CEO of Airbnb. On the left side of the photo is Amol. Amol was the very first guest on Airbnb. They actually spent a weekend together in San Francisco when Airbnb kind of launched. You notice the difference between this photo and the previous photo? Well, this photo actually is a real photo. It includes a two-way conversation with a real customer. Great founders talk to future customers before they even have a product. In fact, the very best founders in the world learn directly from their users throughout the life of their company.
So yeah, I think this is a very important point where the founders are essentially talking to the users even before a product has been built or is being sold, because that gives you the opportunity to learn from them and figure out what are the opportunities you have, and figure out the scale of the problem, and then build your solution. So it's not always best advice to just build something and the users will come. It always is to have a problem in mind, talk to customers who you can find out who have similar problems, and learn from them on their existing workflow, and build this relationship where talking to your customers brings value to the product and what features you're trying to build in essence. But yeah, the best founders in essence learn from their users and build this healthy relationship of getting feedback and iterating on that feedback to begin with.
Let that sink in. If you have correctly identified who your users are, you should learn from them throughout the lifetime of your company. Why, you might ask? Users and customers will keep you honest. They are the only stakeholders actually paying you anything. If anyone will tell you the truth, it will be them. So my talk today is about how to do this well. So let's talk about another Airbnb story. In 2010, and I remember this myself, Brian Chesky, the CEO of Airbnb, he decided to launch an experiment. He was going to give up his apartment and live in 50 different Airbnbs over the next couple of months. You might ask yourself, why would anyone do that? So much hassle. Most people who read the articles about this experiment, because he did announce it, they missed the point. I personally remember this being kind of crazy. By doing this, Brian will literally get a chance to talk to every one of these 50 hosts each single day on his trip, and what an incredible source of honest feedback on your product. Without the Airbnb hosts, Airbnb would not exist today. What Brian, Joe, and Nate did so early is deeply understand the motivations and the feedback from their hosts. Still today, Brian and Joe gets calls from hosts on their personal cell phone numbers. I remember them telling me that on their first day I worked at Airbnb. Why do they do that? Well, it's the number that they put on the website and share with all of their hosts early on. They weren't hiding behind anonymous email. They wanted to hear from the customers. At the time, this seemed almost radical. Most founders would spend their time in front of the computers trying to find scalable growth channels like Google Ads. Unfortunately, most founders still don't build personal connections with their users today. They hide behind info at emails or do not reply emails. You don't believe me? You should just do a search in your email for do not reply at and see how many people don't want to talk to their customers. So let's start by trying to figure out who I should talk to. It's always easy to interview people that you know or people who are in your network. They're simply the most likely to respond, but perhaps can be less honest in their answers to not offend you. Don't be afraid of reaching out to them, and don't be afraid of rejection. The second group here is coworkers or former coworkers. They can be a really great source. They might know the topic really well, and if you're building software for startups, you can easily navigate yourself to someone who's a potential user. It's also very common that the early users you speak to are outside of your personal circles or your coworker circles. When asking YC founders how they found their early users, some of the most common answers were LinkedIn, Reddit forums, Slack or Discord communities, and sometimes in-person events. So to illustrate this
So yeah, I think you can review and go through the whole video. I'll link it within the description and within our Twitter threads. But yeah, in essence, it talks about how do you figure out who to talk to and how to talk to them, right? So the first phase of the video is who should I talk to and how you should essentially build these relationships with customers, which we already discussed. And this helps with better user research and having all the cases and corners covered for you to then and build the actual feature or the enhancement or the product from scratch, where customers are actually willing to pay and helping you grow your business and product in essence. But yeah, this is a great video which I link, which you can go through and look at other ways where they give multiple examples in the life of Airbnb and how they use and experiment with their users in mind and get live feedback working with them directly. But yeah, part of research is also to look at quantitative and qualitative research methods, right? Qualitative research is direct, where it is you can where you look at why and how to fix a problem. And then on the quantitative side, which is more indirect, we look at how many and how much importance does a problem really have across the landscape. So you can create this grid. I think in the article as well we talk about qualitative and quantitative research. Methods where qualitative research explores reasons and motivations behind actions, which is essentially understanding context and getting more context and background on a particular problem and the reason for the problem and why it is a problem to begin with. And on the quantitative side, you look more on the metrics and you have actual numbers to back off things by, right? Probably can be the number of users on a platform, the average view duration, the average time they spend on the platform, and things like this. So yeah, these are a few user research methods that you can apply, and you can also then chart them using a few of these ways, where the best way to, for example, research, there are multiple ways you can always talk to customers. If you already have a feature built and you want to understand how the behavior is, and if you want to potentially bring enhancements, how do you think about that? You can probably do A/B testing for that, right? And you can, on the quantitative side, you could also do on surveys with customers. You can create focus groups with a particular set of users who belong or have a same problem. You can look at concept testing. You have all these things. But yeah, the easiest way to get started is with qualitative, with customer feedback, or having like an option within your platform or product where either users can email to you, or they can create tickets, or they can just request for some enhancement or feedback or improvements to be done for the platform, and for you to essentially add these things to clear out the workflow. So the easiest step to start with is requesting or having an option to provide customer feedback or report a bug to begin with, and then you can use all these other methods to get more feedback. And yeah, customer feedback is the most natural way, where you through within the product, and the product itself provides an option to look at feedback and grow from there. But yeah, this is about user research in general. I link all the details here in the YouTube description, and also in in our Twitter thread, where you can look at more insights on user research from these resources and build on features that you wish for your target user research and user audience, right? So I think we should probably also cover user personas, and I think the Y Combinator video was talking about personas of who you should talk to for a particular feature, and where you can get the insight on what the problem actually is and get more background and data around it. But yeah, so that's all about user research to begin with. We have multiple sessions pending. We are just not even halfway through our 30 days of PM journey. But yeah, I think we have learned a lot on the problem side, also on the solution side. We have gone through a few frameworks to begin with. But yeah, I think you can always uh, get on this YouTube channel and find resources with respect to product management and learn from there. So yeah, I think that will be it for today, and we will cover more details on our future sessions. But yeah, thank you for joining. Have a great day. Bye.